everybody, and welcome to Kensington Online. My name is Patrick. We're so glad you decided to join us today. And if it's your first time watching, we just want to say a special welcome to you. We also want to let you know that we are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. That's really one of the best places you can find out all the information about who we are and about what's going on here at our church. And we also wanted to say Happy Father's Day to all of you dads out there. We hope you're having a great day today. Today, we're actually theming out our entire service around that. So it's going to be a lot of fun. You're going to hear a fun opener. You're also going to get to see a little game where we do a little dad jokes, so it's going to be a lot of fun there. I'll tell you, I'm actually competing in it, so it's going to be fun. I'm hoping I'll win that one as well. I also want to invite you, if you're watching on Facebook, we have somebody that's going to be joining you in that hosting. So if you want to comment along, feel free to do that. Like, share, and comment below. We'd love to connect with you in that way. Well, I think we're about to get started. The opener is going to be a lot of fun. We'll see you right back here in just a few minutes.
Now there was a time when you loved me so I couldn't do wrong. Now you need to know. See, I've been a bad man, and I'm in deep. Yeah, and I found a brand new love for this man, and can't wait till you see. I can't wait. How you like me now? 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 Yeah. How you like me now? 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 How you like me now?
Hey, Brian Jackson, everybody. You guys get up for Brian Jackson. Fantastic. Fantastic. Hey, welcome to Kensington Church, and happy Father's Day. Can we just give it up for all the dads real quick out there? Yes. Yes, welcome. Well, we're so glad that you're here. My name is Patrick. I'm the lead pastor here, and we're excited you decided to join us today. If you would, go ahead and pull out the card that you got when you came in. That's got a couple of announcements on it that I wanted to highlight and let you know about. We've got a couple things coming up here that we just wanted to put on your radar. And the first thing is every summer we do movie nights here at our Traverse City campus. And this is really an opportunity for you and your family to be able to come out. We do a lot of things around this. There's like, the big kind of blow up bounce house kind of thing, slides, all that's here. We always do food, and then we have a massive screen that we put out on the front lawn, and it's an opportunity for you just to kind of come and spend some time with you and your family. So we'd love for you to join us in that. That's going to be July 27th, and then this year we also have another one coming up August 24th. So July 27th and August 24th are the two that we're going to be doing that at, and so we'd love for you to just go ahead and mark your calendars for that event. The other thing I want to let you know about is next week we are kicking off a brand new series called Learning to Fly. And we're going to be talking about something that's true of every single one of us in the room when it comes to baggage that we carry. And so to give you a little teaser around that, we got a short video, so check this out. So throughout this entire series, what we're going to be talking about is forgiveness and how you can find a way to get rid of some of the baggage that you've been carrying. So we're excited about that. This is an incredible series to invite somebody to, so we'd love for you maybe to bring somebody with you. Because again, no matter where you are on the faith spectrum, the thing that's true of all of us is we have people in our lives we have to learn how to forgive. So we invite you back next week for that. The other thing I want to let you know about is we're doing our outdoor baptisms on August 12th this year. And so what we're doing during that time is we're going to be doing a service that day. We're going to be going out on the lawn, and we're going to have everybody out there, and we'll have an amazing environment for kids out there. But we're going to do baptisms out there as well. So we'd like for you to mark your calendars for August 12th for that one. And then the last thing I want to let you know about is this Wednesday night, we have one of our render services. And real quick, how many of you have ever been to one of our render services? Anybody been to that? Yeah. It's such an incredible night. What we do is we do a service, but it's a little bit of a shorter service. And then what we do is we do a lot more music, and then we'll take communion together as well. And so it's a fun environment. We would love for you to join us for that. It's going to be June 20th, so this Wednesday night. So mark your calendars. It's right here at our church. Now, since it's Father's Day, I got a quick question for you. But to do that, I want you to go ahead and stand up, give 3 or 4 people around you a high five, and then fellas, ask yourselves this question: are you a bacon fan, or are you just a bad person? So ask somebody around you, are you a bacon fan or a bad person?
Hey everybody, this is Patrick, and I just wanted to say thanks again for watching our service today online and being a part of this community. Now, we know that you might have some questions as you watch the service today and want to find out a little bit more information about who we are. And so we've created an environment for you to do just that. Simply go to startingpoint.today. That's startingpoint.today, and fill out that short form, and one of our staff members will reach out to you very shortly and answer any questions that you have about our church and about who we are. Again, thanks so much for watching. We'll be back at the end of the service today to give you a little bit more information, but we'll see you here in just a few minutes.
What's up, everybody? How are we feeling today? Happy Father's Day to all you dads out there. It's been a minute. My name is Brian. This is Annie.
Hey everybody, this is
We're gonna
Patrick, and I just
sequence
wanted to say
like a wave,
thanks
all right?
again for...
You have brought me to the water where my past can be swept away in the currents of your mercy, and I know I'll never be the same. There's no limit to your promise. Jesus, you have done it all for me. Jesus, you have done it all for me.
All right, let's hear you sing this.
Grace comes like a wave crashing over me. Grace comes like a wave crashing over and over and over. I will jump into the water where my soul can be satisfied, and your love is overflowing from within me, and it won't run dry. There's a limit to your promise. Jesus, you have done it all for me. Jesus, you have done it all for me. Yeah. Grace comes like a wave crashing over me. Grace comes like a wave crashing over and over and over. Grace comes like a wave crashing over me. Grace comes like a wave crashing over and over and over.
Let's keep that hand clapping going for this part here. Yeah. You guys are good at that. Good job.
There's healing in the water with a love that flows so deep. Wash over me, wash over me. Forgiveness in the water with a love that flows so deep. Wash over me, wash over me. Salvation in the water with a love that flows so deep. Wash over me, wash over me. Yeah, grace comes like a wave
I love that song because some of you, you're here and you were invited by somebody, you haven't been to church in a long time. There's a line in that song that says, "You're for me, not against me. I am who you said I am." And for a lot of you, that's like one of the foundational pieces of Christianity that's just hard to overcome for you. Like you just like, if a good God or if he loves me and you have all these things. The beautiful part about a lot of the people in this room is that we've discovered that even in the midst of our questions, in the midst of our doubts, in the midst of the moments where it feels like God is distant, that over and over and over again, God has shown us that he is faithful in our lives. So I want to say thanks so much for singing with us. You can go ahead and have a seat. Again, we're so glad that you're here. And hey, can we just have real quick a little family moment too? I want to introduce you guys real quick. Everybody say, "Hey, Daryl." You say, "Hey, Daryl." Yeah, Daryl's one of my favorite people on the planet. Daryl has been attending, or how long have you been attending now? How long have you? About a year. He's been playing bass with us for about a year. His son, Hunter, has actually just joined our team as well. He's back there. He's making something happen with buttons. I don't know what they do back there, but my mic works, so I'm a fan. So Hunter's on our team too. And Daryl, he took a little bit of a break because of like a heart thing that had gone on, but all of that went well, and he's on the mend. So this is his first Sunday back. So can we just welcome Daryl back? Super excited that you're here, man. We love you. Love that guy. Hey, I wanted to say too, if it's your first time, one of the things that we do in our services is we actually we do an offering, and if you come to church, that's one of the things that you hear about. Like if I show up at church, all they want is my money, and so we say this around here a lot. In some ways, that's true, but not because we just want your money. But we believe very deeply that when people come together and they give, they can be a part of something that is so much bigger than themselves, and that's what a lot of people in this room do. A lot of us give sacrificially, and we see things happen both in our community, but we see things happen globally as well. And so I still want to say this a lot, but I just want to say thank you so much for those of you who give. And so we want to invite our ushers to move forward. We're going to go ahead and receive our offering. And we say this too, one of the easiest ways to give is either on your mobile app or online. That's one of the best ways that you can do it. You can even set up recurring giving. That's what our family does. So we'd love to invite you to do that. Now, if you're new, one of the things that we also like to say is this, that when you give, again, you see things happen locally, but you also see things happen globally. And because of the people in this room, because of the people at our 6 campuses, what we see is that we're able to reach a little over 500,000 people all over the world because of your giving. And so really, only a portion of what you give here just really happens here. It actually goes all over the world. And so we just wanted to say thank you so much for partnering with us and seeing some of those amazing things happen. Now today, with it being Father's Day, we have some fun things in store for you. You're going to get to hear from one of my favorite speakers here in just a few minutes. But with it being Father's Day, we just assume that dads are really cool. Am I right? Dads, are you pretty cool out there? Yeah, like you're... Hey, well,
Most of us dads are pretty cool.
well, hey, Brian Jackson. Hey, one more time, Brian Jackson, ladies and gentlemen. What's up, man?
Thank
What are you doing?
Well, I wanted to come out here and wish you a special happy Father's Day.
Thank you. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, there's something that you and I think, have in common, and that's after being dads, we both really appreciate a nice, good dad joke.
A good dad joke.
Or a bad dad joke,
Or
if you
bad-
will. Because most of them, let's be real, they're bad.
Yeah.
They're really bad.
All right, can we just ask the ladies real quick? Ladies, just be honest. Like, you're in church. How many of you've heard a dad joke from your husband at some point? A really bad, cheesy, they're calling you out. That's great. So they know what we're talking about. That's great. Yeah.
I can see them rolling their eyes from here.
Yeah, that's great. It's awesome. Yeah, so dad jokes.
You know what I was thinking? I was thinking, you know what would make my Father's Day really special today? Is if we had a nice, good dad joke battle here.
A dad joke battle.
You up for that?
I would totally be
So
up for
here you
that.
got some good ones. You know who else I hear has some really good ones?
Who else has some good ones?
That would be Nick Toomey.
Nick Toomey, who's also speaking,
Nick
ladies and
Toomey.
gentlemen. Where's Nick at? Nick, get up here, man.
Let's bring Nick up
You
here.
guys get up for Nick.
So this is how this is going to go.
Hold on.
Yeah.
You have a walk-up song? How'd you get a walk-up song, man?
It's entrance music.
Hey,
How did that happen?
when you pay people off on donuts, you can get anything.
There you
Right, Brian?
That's right. That's right. I like Boston cream. It's
There
my
we go.
favorite.
All right. It's good to know.
So this is how this is going to go. Each contestant here, they're going to take turns telling us their best dad jokes. If you laugh, you lose. So you got to keep a straight face, okay? We can't have a chuckle house. You know.
Which one of us do you
I
think is
just
a
lost
chuckle house?
already.
What is that?
I don't
Chuckle
know.
House.
We're about to find out.
You were about to find out.
Didn't know I was going to say that, did you?
I'm glad you did. I'm really glad you did.
So we're going to take turns saying if somebody laughs, you get a point up here on the boards here. See? And we're going to do this like golf score. Lowest score wins. So if you
Okay.
keep a straight face, you're not going to get any points. You're going to win, okay?
All right.
And I think it's only fair since, Nick, since you've been a father the longest, I think you should give us the first dad joke. You up for that?
Hold on, I need to.
I'm up for it.
Let's hear what you got here.
All right. First one.
I'm trying. Yeah.
What do you call syrup with a speech impediment? Nothing?
What was the Teddy bear
Mrs.
punchline?
Stuttersworth.
Mrs. Stutters. I think the setup was funnier. All right, that was a good one.
Patrick, you were up. And you're losing. You're losing, just so you know.
I am losing. All right. I'm reading a book about anti-gravity. It's impossible to put down.
Look at that. Stone cold faces. Oh, points! Nick's winning. Patrick, 2 points.
I like the tongue in the side of the mouth. I think we need to zoom in.
It helps to bite the inside of your cheek.
It's good.
What fish tastes best with peanut butter?
I don't know.
Jellyfish.
I liked it. I liked it.
Am I getting booed by the... It's Father's Day, for crying out loud. You're like obligated to laugh.
All right, I think we're safe with that one. Patrick, you're up.
Here we go.
2-0.
You're American when you go into the bathroom, and you're American when you come out. But do you know what you are while you're in there?
I have no idea.
European.
It's a bathroom joke. It's funny. Yeah!
Middle school pastor days, man. Like,
Dude, you're getting
Nick
smoked.
doesn't even have a point yet.
I think we've got one more round here.
One
Just
more
one
piece.
more?
So save your
Man,
best
I got
ones
3
here.
more. All right. My favorite one. No, I'm throwing this one out. This doesn't count, but because it's for my grandson. So this is.
Oh yeah.
Why does a zombie never win a race? Too dead tired. That's for my grandson. That's a good one.
That's a good one.
Here's the real one. What is Forrest Gump's password? One, Forrest, one!
I think this is another point for Patrick.
Have you scored
Is
yet?
it?
All right, here we go. I'm gonna at least get one.
Man,
I think I laughed at that one, but they didn't. They didn't.
They didn't
penalize me,
ping
so
you.
I'm good.
All right, here we go.
I'll let it slide.
I'm excited about this.
Oh. Closing the gap here.
Yeah. So, what do you call a fake noodle?
A fake noodle.
An impasta.
I guess we never said
I think that was the last
allowed,
one.
so,
That was the
yeah.
last one. Yeah. that
Well,
was
I
good.
think it's safe to declare Nick is our winner
Yeah,
today.
for Nick Toomey, ladies and gentlemen.
Congratulations, Nick. Winner of the Bad Dad Joke Battle. Congratulations.
Get that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, hey, give it up for the band. Thanks, guys. I didn't know when I came here I was going to get my own walk-up song. But happy Father's Day to all of you dads out there. Thanks for coming. Because on Father's Day, I think all the mothers on Mother's Day, they all want to come. They want to bring their families. On Father's Day, the dads all want to bail and go golfing. So I'm glad you're here. Hey, I don't know if you fathers have gotten any Father's Day gifts yet. It probably comes later, but I just found this like amazing gift. Not that my family got it for me, but I just saw this thing online. It's kind of creepy looking, but this is like the ultimate Father's Day gift. This is like, apparently there's a company where you can take a photo of your father or your grandfather, send it in. They'll make a block of cheese. That's what you call the ultimate cheesy Father's Day gift. which is kind of creepy because it's $810, by the way. I don't know why my family didn't spend that, but like if you actually got that, what do? Say Happy Father's Day and saw his head off and eat it? It's like just strange. But anyway, enough about that. So in our culture, with its obsession with superheroes, it's kind of hard for regular, ordinary dads to live up to that. I mean, the superheroes that we see, whether it's the string of Marvel movies or the latest Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson film that just came out, I think it's called Skyscraper. I mean, those guys. You ever see these films where these guys, they'll be running into danger? There's like 15 machine guns just unloading. They never get hit, and they turn around, they fire like one shot, and 5 guys go down. It's amazing how that happens. They'll be in a head-on collision. The car disintegrates. It explodes into flames. They walk away unscathed. I think in this new Skyscraper film, I saw the trailer, and The Rock jumps out of this building like 50 floors above ground, and does like triple flips, and lands on the other side of the street in a building, just nails the landing. Me, if I jumped off this stage, I'd blow out both knees and end up in the hospital. So in a world where we have these unrealistic superheroes, the question is, can any of us real, regular, mortal dads live up to that? And well, the answer is no, we can't be like The Rock on a film. But can regular guys be in the trenches, real life, everyday superheroes? And the answer is absolutely yes. I've actually called today's message Dads That Make a Difference. And so we're going to talk today about one dad who did make an enormous difference, not only in his family, but in history. And his name is Abraham. And we'll come back to him in a moment. But this is kind of the key thing that I want us to wrestle with. And it's this. It's not our ability, whether we're dads or maybe someday we'll be dads, or really it doesn't matter your gender. But I think it's true across the board. It's not our ability that allows us, in this case, to be a dad who makes a difference. It's not our abilities. We have a wide range of abilities and so forth. It's really our availability. And that's what we discover in the life of Abraham. And you may be saying, well, who's Abraham? And that's a fair question. Some of you know something about this guy. It's not Abraham Lincoln, but it's a man named Abraham who comes out of the Old Testament. And Abraham is one of the most influential people in the history of the world. So if you don't know anything about him, I think it's important that you know at least a couple things. Among the things, one of the reasons why he's one of the most influential people in the world is he is the father of the entire Jewish nation. So the nation of Israel that exists today, it traces its lineage back to Abraham. But it wasn't just the Jewish people. The Jewish descendants come through his son Isaac, and then his grandson Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel. But he was also, he had a son named Ishmael, who became the father of all the Arab groups in the world that exist today. All those nations trace the roots back to Abraham, and 3 world religions trace back to Abraham. Judaism, which is the oldest of the 3. Christianity, because Jesus came out of the lineage of Abraham. And then Islam. All 3 of those religions trace their heritage back to Abraham. So when it comes to dads who make a difference, what I want to point out here is that this is not like dumb luck when you end up with a healthy marriage, when you raise young children who become mature, loving adults. It doesn't just happen. It's really the result of everyday, in the trenches, heroes. Maybe not the superheroes who leap tall buildings in a single bound, but Abraham was one of them. And as flawed and as imperfect as Abraham was, he serves as one example from God's word, from the Bible, of a dad that made a difference. Now, there are all kinds of character qualities in Abraham's life, and we don't have time to go through all of them. I'm actually going to be taking excerpts from a chunk of the first book in the Bible. It's called Genesis. It starts with the creation of the world, and you got all kinds of stuff that happens in the first 11 chapters. But from chapters 12 through 22, actually well beyond that, but at 12 through 22 is what I'm going to focus on. And in Abraham's life, we see all kinds of important character qualities. We see, among other things, was a man who was a hard worker. And that's an important attribute of an everyday hero. They work, they sacrifice, they provide for their family. We see in Abraham that there was a generosity in him. And I'm not going to go into detail about that, but there's an interesting story in Genesis 13 where he and his nephew Lot both have lots of flocks and herds, and they were overgrazing the land. So Abraham basically says, look, there's a lot of land out there. You pick a spot and I'll take the leftover. And Lot chooses the best. He chooses the Jordan Valley. If you've ever been to Israel, that's a very lush area. It also happened to be right in the shadow of Sodom and Gomorrah. But there's a generosity about Abraham, and I think that's one of the things you see in dads who make a difference. There's a generosity of their time, their spirit, and even their resources. There's a warrior spirit in dads that make a difference, and we certainly see that in Abraham's life. Again, in that window in the book of Genesis, there's an episode where Lot and his family are basically kidnapped and taken as slaves, and Abraham musters up his troops. There were only 331 men, and they chase these guys from the south of Israel all the way to the north. He fought for his family, and the real day modern in the trenches heroes are the men who fight for their families. They fight for their sons and their daughters. I was thinking about that, and somehow I always go back to this goofy sketch that was on Saturday Night Live some years ago, known as the motivational speaker. So Chris Farley playing the role of Matt Foley. And if you've seen that, you know, he's the big, heavy guy living in the van down by the river. But there was a scene before that where the late Phil Hartman, and I don't remember who's playing the role of the mother, but these rebellious teenage kids are sitting on the couch, rolling their eyes at their parents. It was David Spade and Christina Applewhite or Applegate, whatever her name was. But anyway, the dad makes this comment. He says, because he's teeing it up for the motivational speaker, he says, hey kids, your mom and I, we don't want to get down on you. Remember that scene, any of you? We don't want to get down. And the kids are like rolling their eyes like my parents are the biggest losers. Let me tell you something about dads who are warriors. You know what they do with their kids? They get down on them. They get in their business. Not to bully them, not to shame them. But have you ever noticed that children have the capacity to make really bad decisions? I like to say that a dad who's a modern day hero, they not only get down on their kids in a way that actually they get down on them to raise them up, but I love dads who get down on their kids and get down with their kids. You know what I'm saying? Like if you don't, we have dance parties with our kids and grandkids all the time. So you see that in Abraham. There was a sense in which he was willing to go to battle for his family. So there's a lot of attributes about Abraham, but I want to spend our time focusing on three key ones. And the first one is actually the one where I want to camp most of our time. What we see in Abraham, the dads that make a difference, the everyday heroes, there was a deep, practical, in the trenches faith. Deep, practical, not pie in the sky, but in the trenches faith that guided Abraham's life and that impacted his family. And that's why we're still talking about him today. Now, at the very beginning of Abraham's journey, there's a section where there's a command from God that's followed by an enormous promise. Here's the command. This is Genesis chapter 12, verse 1. The Lord had said to Abram, go from your country. By the way, Abraham, his name was Abram, and he was renamed Abraham, which means father of many nations. So the Lord said to Abram, go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. And the operative word there is go. This is not a suggestion. This is a command. Then comes the promise. The promise starts with verse 2. And God says to Abraham, if you go, because it's conditioned, you go, here's my end of the deal. I will make you into a great nation. Now, he's fairly old at this time. He's got no descendants. He says, I'm going to make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. That's an enormous promise that God makes to Abraham. But what made Abraham a dad who made a difference is that he acted on his faith. This is not, he didn't just intellectually say, okay, he acted on his faith. So if you want to be a dad who makes a difference, it really comes down to hearing from God like Abraham did, and then just obeying what God tells you to do. You hear from God, you obey what God tells you to do, and you do that in the trenches of your life where people around you, especially your own kids, go, this is legit. My dad, his faith is real. I heard a story about, and I don't even know if this guy was a dad. I think he's a young man, but he heard from God. He's in India. I heard about this through a ministry that I'm involved with called Big Life. And I think he had family or some connections in Bangladesh across the river. And God laid it on his heart to take God's word to the Muslim people groups in Bangladesh. So he has this idea. He gets a backpack and he stuffs it full of Bibles, of New Testaments, and he underlined John 3:16, Romans 5:8, a bunch of key verses, so that when he distributed the Bibles in Bangladesh, he could show these people. So he gets, it's like midnight, and because it's illegal to cross, he's going to cross the river. Now, by the way, this river's like, I've seen it, it's like a half a mile. It might even be a mile wide. And there's a fairly strong current that goes out to the Bay of Bengal. If that young man actually did what he intended to do, he probably would have drowned. So as he's going by the river, he's spotted by the Indian police, and they tell him to halt. He starts running, and they're firing at him. Not like superheroes. If he gets hit, he's going to die. He gets to the river, and he takes the backpack off, chucks it into the river, and he's thinking, well, I'll come back later. I don't know why he thought this, but I'll come back later. I'll retrieve the Bibles, and then I'll take them over. Well, the Bibles, they're going to get washed away. And they're not like in Ziploc waterproof bags. He just throws it in the water. I don't know how he thinks he's going to find these things. And the police, they arrest him and they take him to jail and they released him after 2 days. And he went, well, that was a bummer. But God had placed this on my heart to bring the good news of Jesus over into Bangladesh. So he said, I'll try something next month. About 3 or 4 days later, maybe a week later, after he was out of jail, because it's like 9 days total, guys knock on his door. He opens the door and they say, are you so-and-so? He goes, yeah. He goes, why didn't you put your name and your contact information in the book? He's like, what are you talking about? He says, this book, we found it across the river in Bangladesh. He's like, what? How in the world does a sack of Bibles in a non-waterproof bag make its way to the other side of the river dry? And they said, yeah, we started to read this and we saw these verses that are underlined and we don't fully understand them. But I passed one on to my brother and my brother-in-law. We now have 4 groups in Bangladesh that are reading about this Jesus guy. Can you help us out? So that's a guy who hears from God and acts on it in a way that's going to impact the next generation. So I would say it this way. Dads, let faith form you. Just like faith formed Abraham. Let your faith form you in a way that your words and actions forms faith in others. That's the kind of dad that's going to make a difference. So let your wives and your children see you read and then lead on the basis of what God reveals to you in his word. Make like the moral decisions of your life. Let them flow out of what you hear from God. And it's not a mystery. Thou shalt not lie. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not cheat on your wife. Right? So let your, if you want to be a real life, everyday hero to your kids, you want to be the dad that makes a difference, let them see how your faith impacts your life, from the moral decisions to the financial decisions, even as we talk about forgiveness over the next couple of weeks, as they see you. Learn how to forgive them. It's going to make a difference. So talk with your children, not only about what you believe, but why you believe it. And I remember some years ago, before Kensington, this church was called Bay Point. And there was no Bay Point at one time. I was pastor of another church, and we felt God calling us out of there to start this church called Bay Point. And I remember having to talk to my kids about it. Now, my daughter, Chrissy, was only 11 years old at the time. But as we're talking to her about this faith that was forming us, she wanted no part of it, because all of her friends were at this other church. But that became a catalytic moment where we talked to her not only about what we believe God was calling us to do, but the why behind it. Now, I'm not sure she understood all of that at 11 years old, but it's important if we're going to be dads that make a difference. Abraham's willingness to trust God no matter what may be the greatest legacy that he left to his children. And why would I say that? Because the New Testament actually, as the New Testament memorializes Abraham, here's what it says about Abraham. It says it was by faith, this is Hebrews chapter 11, it was by faith that Abraham obeyed when God called him to leave home and to go to another land that God would give him as his inheritance. He went without knowing where he was going. It's one thing to leave something when you know what that other thing is, but to leave everything you know on a journey where you have no idea where it's going to end up, that's a whole other thing. And this says, and even when he reached the land God promised him, he lived there by faith, for he was like a foreigner living in a tent. So Abraham, he went in faith, but when he got there, he had to live in faith, and everybody knew it, especially his family. So here's a question. How do you leave a legacy of faith? For those of you who really would love to pass on something in your life that can live on for future generations, how do you leave a legacy of faith where you leave it one faith-informed decision at a time? The dads who make a difference. It's one faith-informed decision at a time. So I would say to all of us, but to dads in particular, if it would be a dream of yours that your children would live life with the heart of a servant, if you want the next generation and maybe your grandchildren and beyond that to live an other-centered life in a me-centered world, if you want your children to be kind and compassionate in a world that can be sometimes cold and cruel, well, if the faith that forms you is lived out in such a way that it forms faith in your children, there's a pretty good chance it'll get passed on. Here's the way Jesus put it in the New Testament. And this is not just for dads, it's for all of us. But he says, let your light shine before others. And the others would certainly be our own families, so that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. So I think about my own dad on Father's Day. My dad was born on June 6th. So his birthday was 11 days ago. If he was still alive, he would be 95. He's one of those guys from the greatest generation, World War II vet and all that. My dad he had a lot of the attributes of Abraham. He's hardworking, he's faithful, loved his family, loved my mom. But we never had any faith conversations with my dad. We just never talked about Jesus. It's not that he was an unbeliever. He just wasn't part of his vocabulary. And I share that with all of us who maybe come out of homes like ours, because you could be that first generation person that forms the faith in your children. You have your own personal encounter with the Lord Jesus, which I'll talk about in a minute, and you begin to pass that on to your kids. You can have that same impact that Abraham had on his children, even if you didn't get that from your father. So I would just say, if you want to live with no regrets, I would just say follow God. That was the first thing that we see in Abraham. He followed God no matter what. And if you do that, your kids, they're not going to forget it, and the world will be blessed as a result. So that's the first thing, is that it was Abraham's faith. Here's the second one, and that is that Abraham understood the value of a human soul. And there's an interesting story that depicts this in Genesis chapter 18. Remember, I said we're going to take a look at a few excerpts. In Genesis 18, there's a story where Abraham's nephew Lot settles in the Jordan Valley near the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. And apparently those two cities had become so wicked, so perverse, that God tells Abraham, I'm going to wipe out both cities. It's a hard story to read, but it begs the question, unless God is just a meanie or a bully, how bad must it have been? How wicked must it have been for God to say that? So there's this fascinating conversation that ensues, because Abraham says, like, okay, now God, I've followed you long enough where I have a sense that you're like a merciful God, you're a gracious God, but like, Lord, are you going to wipe out the city like completely, like everybody? Like, what if there's 50 righteous people? God says, I'll spare the city on behalf of the 50. And Abraham's like, I don't want to test your patience, but what about 45? What about 40? What about 30? What about 20? He gets all the way down to this passage, and it says, finally Abraham said, Lord, please don't be angry with me if I speak one more time. Suppose only 10 are found there. And the Lord replied, then I will not destroy the city for the sake of 10. which is really shocking if you think about it. There was not a single righteous person in the whole city, which speaks to the corrosive nature of sin. It's why in the New Testament it says that we should confess our sins one to another so that we'll be healed. In one of John's epistles in the New Testament, it says if we say we have no sin, the truth is not in us, and we deceive ourselves. But if we confess our sin to God, He'll wipe it away. He'll take it away. Because if we don't do that, our sin, there's a corrosive nature to sin that it doesn't just affect me. It affects my family. And you get enough people that live in open rebellion with an unrepentant heart, and it can tank an entire culture. And that's what's going on here. But here's what I want us to note about Abraham, is a dad who made a difference. It was his concern for people. So dads who make a difference instill in their children the value that all lives matter to God. From the oldest, frailest person to the unborn child in their mother's womb, to the smartest, to the simplest, that including people who are in open rebellion against God, which, by the way, all of us fit that description at one point. Maybe we're still there. But it's commendable for Abraham to say, man, I'm glad I'm not part of that town. I'm out of here. No. He stops and says, Lord, are you sure about this? Are you sure? This is the value that Kensington talks about with regard to evangelism. That you will never lay eyes on a person for whom Jesus did not willingly shed his blood. This church is about trying to figure out ways to reach that one who is far from God. And dads, if your children see you engaging with what I sometimes refer to as the last, the least, and the lost, if they see you engaging in gospel-centered conversations, if they see you inviting your friends to events like Man Up or I can't remember the name of the ministry, that's the hunting and fishing group here. What do they call that? Field and Stream. Yeah, FAST, right? Field and Stream Team. Yeah, that kind of stuff. If your kids see you inviting your friends to that, if they see you just serving people and not judging those far from God, they will likely take their cue from you and have that same perspective that Abraham had, which is a compassion for people. And speaking of this value of evangelism, at the beginning of the service, if you weren't in the room, there's a series coming up next week called Learning to Fly. And I love that analogy of letting go of the baggage, but this series is really about forgiveness and is one of the distinctives of the Christian faith. This whole idea of the God who forgives us and calls us to forgive others. And this series, I think, if I'm understanding it correctly, it's really about learning to forgive others and learning to forgive ourselves. And I cannot tell you how critical that is. And what happens to us when we don't do that well? It's really important. So if you've got friends that are far from God, trust me, they're dealing at some level with this issue of forgiveness. And this is a place we'll be able to wrestle those down. Okay, so Abraham had a deep practical in the trenches faith. He understood the value of human souls. Last one real quick is this issue of of his self-awareness of his personal brokenness. Because, even though he's a man of faith, no sooner does he start out on this journey than he betrays his wife. Very interesting passage. This is Genesis chapter 12, I think verse 10. It says, at that time a severe famine struck the land of Canaan, forcing Abram to go down to Egypt, where he lived as a foreigner. It goes on and says, as he was approaching the border of Egypt, Abram said to his wife Sarai, she later became Sarah, look, you are a very beautiful woman. Now, can you imagine Sarai going, aw, that's so nice. You're not so bad looking yourself. He's like, well, wait a second, there's more to this. When the Egyptians see you, they will say, this is his wife, let's kill him, then we can have her. And Sarai's going, yeah, that doesn't sound very good. Abram's like, that's okay, I got a solution. Next verse, so please tell them you are my sister. Then they will spare my life and treat me well because of their interest in you. Not the finest husband moment. Ladies, you think your man blew it? This didn't happen just once. This happened twice. Now, if you understand the culture and the very real scenario that Abraham laid out, because they probably would have killed him, maybe you can be a little bit sympathetic. He's just trying to save his life and save his wife's life, but you can slice it any way you want. At the end of the day, it was cowardice and disobedience. But Abraham is a model of a dad who can make a difference because he owned his brokenness. See, Abraham knew that when God called him into this special covenantal relationship, it had nothing to do with the fact that he was some kind of moral or spiritual giant. He was not a superhero in that sense. He knew that his relationship with God, and I hope you understand this, that our relationship with God is 100% anchored in his grace and his mercy. So Abraham, I put it this way, Abraham's failure, in this case his cowardice, did not disqualify him. Rather, his humility uniquely qualified him. See, dads who make a difference in the world, but particularly in their own family, they own their failures. They walk in a spirit of humility. They know how to say to their children, man, I'm sorry. I was wrong. I made a mistake. I forgot. I blew it. They process mistakes that they've made with their children. You don't have to divulge everything, but there are moments where it's healthy to talk, especially as your kids get a little bit older, to say, you know what, there was a time in my life, let me tell you about it, when I zigged and I should have zagged. I remember talking to my kids about, careful here, but there was a point where drugs were a part of my life before I knew Jesus. And I remember talking to my kids, and I was very careful to say, look, I had nobody coaching me on this stuff. I was on my own. So if you think that because I did this when I was 13, it entitles you, I will hunt you down and I will get down on you. Being a dad makes a difference is, it just involves kind of owning your brokenness and being humble enough to go to your kids and say, I'm sorry. And some of you, whatever age you're at, or you're watching online, you've never heard your father say, I'm sorry, a single time. And if that's true, if that's you, then I just want to tell you, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for that. You know, we're not superheroes. We don't get it right all the time. So if you want to be a dad who makes a difference, learn how to go to your kids. Learn how to go to your wife. Don't make excuses. I'm sorry, but just own your stuff. Tell them I'm sorry I hurt you. Sorry I let you down. Tell them forgive me and I love you. And I'll tell you, I've known men my age. I'm 59 years old. Be 60 in a couple months. I've known guys my age whose fathers are still alive. They're in their 80s or 90s, still hoping that one day dad will say he's sorry. And if your children are younger and they see a pattern of humility in us dads, it is an incredible gift that you give to your children that will then get passed on to future generations. And if you were raised by a dad who was not faithful, he was not an honorable man, and he maybe wasn't ever involved in your life, what do you do when Father's Day rolls around? You know what you do? You do the best you can. You do the best you can. It doesn't help to fake it. But maybe for some of us, there are simple ways that are not disingenuous, but there might be simple ways where we can figure out ways to show honor to men who maybe haven't been all that honorable. Because sometimes when we do that, when we take a first step, sometimes there's a healing in our own hearts, and sometimes it can soften the hard heart of your father. So, you'll have to kind of listen to the whisper of God and do what he tells you to do. But just let me summarize. We're just basically scratching the surface of Abraham's life. He was an amazing man. There's a story I haven't even told you about. One of the most epic stories in his life is when God called Abraham to sacrifice his son Isaac. That's one of these stories where you're like, what? God's calling him to kill his own son? No. You have to understand that in that culture, child sacrifice was fairly common in the pagan religions. Abraham would have known about it. So when God says, I want you to take your son Isaac, the child that I had promised you, and Abraham's 100 years old now. No, he's older than that because Isaac was like, I don't know, 13 or something. He's like 110, 115 years old. And he's like, God, you want me to what? And so he takes Isaac and he makes this altar and he's going to kill his son. That story it was never about the death of Isaac. It was about the death of Abraham. It was about, Abraham, are you willing to die to the script that you have for your life? And follow me no matter what, because I have a very different plan for you. So, what would our families be like? What would our churches be like? What would our schools be like? What would our communities be like? Those of us who are every day in the trenches, dads, grandpas, stepdads, men who aren't necessarily dads but play a father role in somebody's life, what would it be like if, like Abraham, we just said to God, I'm all in. I'll follow you in immediate, radical, costly obedience? What if we adopted the open-handedness of an Abraham? What if we were warriors that fought for our wives, fought for our sons and our daughters? What if we lived with a kind of brokenness and humility that affected the next generation and brought great honor and glory to God? So I throw that out to all of us as fathers to say, well, I wonder if there's an area where we say, you know what, God, I want to pursue you. I want you to use my life. God, I'm not a superhero. I'm just a regular dude. But if I can live a life fully surrendered to you, with an in the trenches faith, if I can live my life where I see the value of human beings, maybe, God, I could have a legacy, something like Abraham. So I just want to say to all of you regular, ordinary guys, dads, grandpas, stepdads, and men like me, thank you for every sacrifice, every effort you make to show love and compassion and kindness to your family and to make the world a better place. And if you wonder if all those sacrifices, all those things that you do that nobody sees, if you wonder if they really make a difference, check out this story on the video. This one's for you.
Growing up, I never really knew my dad, my biological father. And so that was something that was really tough growing up because everybody that I knew in my neighborhood, they had a mom and a dad. And it was kind of awkward because it's like, well, I just have my mom. That really established a great bond between me and my mom because it was just us. Like, it was me and her against the world, and that was just like what we were doing. And then when I was 5, she met a guy. He had an opportunity to literally just focus on my mom and concentrate on my mom and making her happy, but he saw me there and he intentionally took the time out to make sure that I was cared for and making sure that I was okay. And he made it known from the beginning that that was something that he wanted to do and that he wanted to participate in just being in my life. And he never really wanted to exclude me. And I hear a lot of people give me stories about how they really felt excluded by, like, you know, their new dad coming in, and he always sacrificed comfort and finances and everything just to make sure that I felt included. And so I think that was probably the biggest thing throughout my life. Him making sure that I was included and making sure that I was valued and that I was respected as like an active participant in the family, that's how he earned the title of dad. I would say that I've seen my dad fight for me and my family just by consistently encouraging me and always making sure that he knew that I knew that I was great and that I was eligible for greatness. He would always tell me, you can do anything, and don't allow anyone to tell you that you can't. And that's something that really shaped me because confidence is something that is a struggle for all of us, myself included, but whenever I can get a hold of my dad, he's just like, listen, don't let anyone tell you that you can't do this. You know who you are. This is like, you're my kid. Like, this is who you are. You're going to be great because I said you're going to be great. That's who God made you to be, and that's who you are. He always told me to make sure that I always treat people not just the way that I wanted to be treated, but to treat people the way that God treats me. He modeled Christ in the way that he treated others. It really has shown me what a real man is and what a real man does when the chips are down. And not even just a real man or a real father, but just a real leader. Being a leader is really a response. And being a leader is all about how you respond. And so that's allowed me to pretty much be there for any and everyone that I can be there for, whether that's as a ministry leader or as just a friend to someone. I always think to myself, this is something that my dad would fight for. This is something that my dad would want to help someone with. And so because of that, I always want to make sure that I'm always there for someone, especially when they need it.
Let's all stand and sing for this last song. We're going to sing Great Are You, Lord, together. You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you, holy. Sing this with me. You give life. You give life. You are love. You bring light to the darkness. You give hope. You restore every heart that is broken. And great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. Let's hear every voice declare this. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord.
Okay, before I dismiss you and pray like this rousing blessing on all of the dads, the grandpas, and even the young men who aren't dads and someday may be, I want to say something about that song. I'm so glad they played that. It's not like a traditional, I don't know if there is a traditional Father's Day like worship anthem, but here's what I want to point out. I think about Steve Andrews, who's the founding pastor of Kensington, and I was the founding pastor of Bay Point. Steve and I have become friends, and we've swapped stories. He comes out of a very different family from me. He had like an amazing mom and dad, and in some ways I did too, but the faith perspective, totally different. But I think if Steve were here, he'd tell you the same thing I am. I don't care whether you had the best mom and dad in the world, or maybe not so great moms and dads. There is something in the human soul that no human being can fill. That's why if you come out of the most loving, Christ-centered family, as awesome as that is, there's still something in your soul that your mom or your dad cannot fill. And that's why I love that song, because it speaks about another father. And I know that speaking about God as Father is difficult in this culture because there's so many fathers that just kind of mess things up. I'm telling you, if you need a father who promises he will never leave you or forsake you, who reminds us over and over in his word that you're his son, your precious daughter, you have royal blood that courses in your veins because you're made in his image. If you need a God who will hold you in the firm grip of his grace late at night, when the waves of grief and sadness that this world brings, I don't even know I have the words to encourage you, to implore you, to flat out beg you. I don't know where everybody is at in terms of relationship with God, but maybe you can just say, God, if you're there, if you're a father, our Father in heaven, I need you. All you have to do is, like I did many years ago, I reached up a sin-stained hand, and the hand of God grabbed hold of me, and he rescued me. And it began a journey. I didn't understand it all then. I don't understand it all now, but I understand a few things. He's real. He is a father who loves you. He's proud of you. He believes in you. He is for you. So on this Father's Day, wherever you're at with your earthly dad, know that there is a Father in heaven who longs to be in a relationship with you. So I want to lead us in a prayer, but mostly I want to just pray a blessing on the dads. So like if there's I'll just do this. I don't know how exactly to do this, but if there's a guy near you, and guys, you can lay hands on each other, but gals, find a guy, even if it's something you don't know, just try to connect with somebody. This can be really weird if you're an introvert. Like I'm not touching somebody I don't know. I just as a blessing, like is that George? George is down here. Somebody needs to lay hands. He's a good man, right? So just be a family. Just reach out to people around you. And so Father, now, first of all, we thank you that you are our Father in heaven. Hallowed be your name. God, may your kingdom come and your will be done on earth, especially in the lives of all the dads, all the stepdads, all the grandpas, all the young men who someday will be fathers, that your kingdom would come and your will would be done in their lives and our lives. We thank you for every man, and we pray a special blessing on them. God, that they would step into their role as spiritual leaders. They would trust you like Abraham did. They would see the value of all human life and live into that. They would live with a generous disposition. They would be warriors for their family. And they would walk in a spirit of humility. Because the Bible says, God, that you resist the proud, but you draw near to the humble. And so, Lord, in this room of men, we humble ourselves before you. And we thank you for each dad in this room. Bless them this day and the days to come. We pray in Jesus' name. And everybody who agreed said, amen. Now I've been reminded to let you, all the dads know, there are donuts out at the table and Arnie Palmer's. And there's also a photo booth back there with golf clubs and all that cool stuff. So happy Father's Day. Go do cool dad stuff. See ya.
And thank you so much for watching online. We're so glad you decided to spend your Sunday with us. And again, we just wanted to say a happy Father's Day. If you're looking for more information about us or any of our campuses, we'd love to connect you to Kensington Church online. You can check that out. It's kensingtonchurch.org. That's really where you can find out a lot of information about us, and also on our social media accounts. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Those are some of the best ways that you can find out more information about us. But we hope you have a great day. And if you're a dad, we hope you have a great day spending time with your family. We'll be right back here next week for a brand new series called Learning to Fly, and we'd love for you to check us out either at live at one of our campuses or online then at 9 or 11. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon. Hey, everybody, and welcome to Kensington Online. My name is Patrick, and I just wanted to say welcome. And if it's your first time, I want to say a special welcome to you as well. And we also want to say Happy Father's Day. We hope you are enjoying it today. If you're a dad, we hope you're enjoying time with your family. And we also hope that you're eating a lot of bacon, because that's what I plan on doing during my Father's Day today. We got an amazing service planned for you. It's themed out, obviously, around dads, and we're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to hear a fun opener here in a few minutes. We actually have some dad jokes prepared for you, so I think you're going to enjoy that as well, and then an incredible message by one of our teaching pastors, Nick Toomey. So it's going to be a fun day. Also want to let you know that if you're not following us on social media, that's one of the best ways to keep up with all that's going on around here, but also to get a little bit more information about who we are. So you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Those are great opportunities for, again, you to learn more about us and just stay up to date on what's going on. Well, I think we're about to get started. Again, the opener is going to be incredible. Know you're going to love it. We'll see you back here in just a few minutes.
Now there was a time when you loved me so I couldn't do wrong, and now you need to know. See, I've been a bad, 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 bad man, and I've been deep. Yeah, see, I found a brand new love for this man, and can't wait till you see. I can't wait. So how you like me now? 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 Yeah. How you like me now? 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 How you like me now?
Hey, real quick, Brian, come here real quick. One more time for Brian Jackson, everybody. Yep. And then can we have a separate round of applause for Brian Jackson's beard? Can we do that? Yeah, we can. Thanks so much, man. Hey, my name's Patrick. Welcome to Kensington. And happy Father's Day. Real quick, can we give it up for all the dads in the room? Yes. Hopefully you had bacon this morning like a real man. That's great. But we're so glad that you're here. And then real quick, if you look over here, there are so many of you, which we're super excited about. Now, tell me, these are counselors, staff, what all, you're all from Lake Ann, right? Yes, that's so great. I love Lake Ann. We've been out there several times. If you're unfamiliar with Lake Ann, it's an incredible camp here. We utilize it quite a bit. And you're from all over the place, right? I think I was talking to you guys outside of Grand Rapids. And then I saw someone in the restroom, which is weird. But they're from Chicago. So, hey, Kyle. So anyway, we're so glad that you guys are here today. If you would, go ahead and pull out the thing that you got when you came in, a little program. I'm gonna talk about a couple things that we've got going on. The first thing I want to let you know about is what we call Family Movie Night. It's coming up July 27th and then August 24th. So the last couple years we've been doing these, and they've been such a hit. We decided to do 2 of them this year, and so we got one coming up again July 27th, August 24th. And if you're unfamiliar about what we do, it's really an amazing night. We have a massive screen. We play, some sort of movie for your kids, and there's so much good food. I honestly come for the food, but it'll be great. We would love for you to hang out with us there. So mark your calendars, July 27th and then August 24th. And then the other thing that I wanted to let you know about that we have coming up is a new series that's starting next week. And the series we're talking about next week, it's called Learning to Fly. And what we're going to be talking about is how we all carry baggage, specifically when it comes to forgiveness and how do we navigate that. So we've got a little teaser for you. I'd love for you to check out this video real quick. I'm super excited about this series, and part of the reason that I am is no matter what you believe about God, or no matter where you are on like the spiritual spectrum, the thing that's true of all of us is that we all have relational hurts and baggage and things that we've got to navigate through. And so for the next couple of weeks, we're going to be talking about how you can figure out how to live your life without that baggage and be able to do that in a healthy way. So that's coming up next week. The other thing I want to let you know about is we have our outdoor baptism that's coming up August 12th. We'd love for you to mark your calendars for that. That's going to be an incredible weekend. If you haven't been to one of those before, we actually go outside. We do baptisms out on the lawn, and we do our entire service out there as well. So mark your calendars for that. It's coming up August 12th. And the last thing I want to let you know about is Render is this coming Wednesday night. How many of you, real quick, you've been to Render before? Anybody been to Render? Yeah, it's really great. It's so much fun, mostly because the messages are shorter. So you'll enjoy. I'm kidding, kind of kidding. We'll see what happens this week. But anyway, it's June 20th, and so what we do is we do music, a lot more music than we typically do on a Sunday. We do communion together, and then we do a short message as well. And so that's coming up June 20th. We would love for you to be here. It's right over in the student room, and so we'd love to invite you to that as well. Now, with this being Father's Day, we've got a couple of fun elements planned for you over the next few minutes. Before we jump into that, I'd love for you to go ahead and stand up, give 3 or 4 people around you a high five, and specifically Dad. Ask this question: do you like bacon, or are you a bad person? One of the two. Those are your only 2 options. Do you like bacon, or are you a bad person?
Thanks again for watching our service today online and being a part of this community. Now, we know that you might have some questions as you watch the service today and want to find out a little bit more information about who we are. And so we've created an environment for you to do just that. Simply go to startingpoint.today. That's startingpoint.today and fill out that short form, and one of our staff members will reach out to you very shortly and answer any questions that you have about our church and about who we are. Again, thanks so much for watching. We'll be back at the end of the service today to give you a little bit more information, but we'll see you here in just a few minutes.
What's up, everybody? How are we feeling today? It's been a minute. It's good to be here. My name is Brian. This is Annie. Ooh, I didn't even have to ask you to clap. Look at that. You guys are awesome. We're going to sing Grace Like a Wave. Here we go. You have brought me to the water where my past can be swept away in the currents of your mercy. And I know we'll never be the same. There's a limit to your promise. Jesus, you have done it all for me. Jesus, you have done it all for me. All right, here we go. Grace comes like a wave crashing over me. Grace comes like a wave crashing over and over and over. I will jump into the water where my soul can be satisfied, and your love is overflowing from within me, and it won't run dry. There's a limit to your promise. Jesus, you have done it all for me. Jesus, you have done it all for me. Yeah. Grace comes like a wave those hands back together for this part. This is a good part to clap. We're going to sing about healing in the water. Sing this with me. There is healing in the water, with a love that flows so deep. Wash over me, wash over me. Forgiveness in the water, with a love that flows so deep. Wash over me, wash over me. Salvation in the water, with a love that flows so deep. Wash over me, wash over me. Yeah. Grace comes like a wave crashing over are for me, not against me.
Chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. Sing it out. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am who you say I
There's this line in there, and I wanted to highlight it because if you're here today and you're not a follower of Jesus, or you're here today and your wife drug you here and said the only way you're getting bacon today, like however that works, and she got you here, whatever that is. Some of you were a follower of Jesus for a long time, and something happened in your life, and it created an enormous amount of just weight and doubt and questions. And there's this line in that song that says, "You are for me, not against me. I am who you say that I am." And the idea that the God of the universe is for you sometimes feels hard. And so one of the things that I love about our church is that you can come with all those doubts, and you can come with all those questions, you can come with all those wonderings of God is really good, and if he's up there, why did he let this happen? And if that sort of thing is true, then what do I do with this? And one of the things, again, that I love is that this is a place where you can explore your faith, that you can try to figure out some of those things. And I just wanted to say to you, if you're here today and you are there and you saw that line and you're like, I don't even know if I believe that, or I don't even know if that's true, I just want to say to you, thanks for coming. And thanks for stepping in the seat, even if she forced you to come. Thanks for being here today and taking a step proactively to begin to discover the God who we believe loves you more than you could ever imagine. And no matter what's happened in your life, is still present with you. So thanks very much for singing with us. You can go ahead and have a seat. Again, we're so glad that you're here. And again, happy Father's Day. Today, we're going to move into the rest of the service in a second, but I want to say to those of you who are here maybe for the first time, this next kind of thing, people have questions about all the time, which I love. A lot of people's perception of church is that all they want is my money, and I'm like, that's kind of true, but not for the reason that maybe you think, right? When you come to church, one of the things that we believe wholeheartedly is that when people come together to give to something that's bigger than them, we can see things happen in extraordinary ways, and that's played out over and over and over and over again at our church because people just like you sacrificially give, and they give to be a part of something that's bigger than them. In fact, because you give and because people give at all of our campuses, what we've discovered is that we're able to reach a little over 500,000 people globally because of people just like you. And that ranges from all sorts of projects that we do in terms of like Hope Water Project. How many of you are involved in Hope Water real quick? You're going to run, cycle, or push a stroller? Anybody doing that? Yeah, that's great. Yeah, well, I'm going to be pushing the stroller 100%. I think that's clear. But so I'll be doing that. But what we do is we raise money. We raise money for people who are on the other side of the world that most of you will never meet so that they can have clean water. The thing that I get most emotional about, and the thing that I think grips my heart the most, is what we do in Nepal when we're able to pull young girls who are a part of sex trafficking out of that and then help them to find jobs that are going to sustain them throughout their life. And again, that is all made possible because of people like you who give. So we just want to say thank you so much for being a part of that. We're going to invite our ushers to move forward. Again, we're going to receive our offering. You can certainly give in the little basket as it goes by. The easiest way to give is through our app or online, so you can do that. I think going mobile is probably the easiest way for you to give. You can also give consistently or recurring in that way. That's how our family does it, but we want to say thank you so much to those of you who are part of that. I also want to say real quick, thank you to those of you who volunteer. We talk about giving as a big piece of this, but volunteering is also a huge piece. And one of the areas that we're looking at right now, specifically in trying to recruit, as we always talk about, is in our family ministries department. So if you're interested in being a K-Kids volunteer or a breakaway volunteer specifically, we're looking for people who would love to be a part of that. And the other thing I would tell you before we jump into some fun stuff, everybody say, hey, Daryl. Can we say, hey, Daryl? Hey, Daryl. Yeah, so Daryl is amazing. He's one of my favorite people on the planet. He's been in our church. Remind me, how long have you been here again? About a year. He came on, is a bass player, obviously, and does an amazing job. And then we recently just hired his son, Hunter. Hunter, actually, he presses buttons that light up, but I don't know what those buttons do. But I'm thankful that he does. And so those things happen back there. But I want to say about Daryl. Daryl, you hadn't seen him up here for a while. He had a heart thing that was going on, and he has passed all that. And I think this is his first or second Sunday back. Is this your first Sunday back since all that? So we just gave Daryl a big round of applause. Pretty awesome. Such a great bass player. It's so funny. Some of you don't even know this. I always like to brag about this, but our musicians are so good. They're so good, and they let me play cowbell every once in a while, which I enjoy. Are you clapping for the cowbell or the musicians? I'm not sure. No, I'm just kidding. No, yeah, they're great. Yeah, they do such a great job. Daryl's played with so many people. Some of you even know this. If you like Christian music, he used to play at one point with Israel. Anybody in Israel Houghton, which is kind of fun. Which you hear this, and Israel's like, this gospel thing, and then Daryl just like, what's up? Like he's got it going on. So I love it, and he does such a great job. So we're glad you're back, man. So today, again, is Father's Day, and with it being Father's Day, we decided we were going to have some fun. Now, here's the thing that I operate and start from, and that's that all dads are cool, right?
I got this.
Oh, God.
He said
Hey.
fun, I came.
You said fun, and I can.
Yeah.
Hey, Brian.
Hey, how's it going,
This
Patrick?
isn't scripted.
No,
This is totally
no.
off the fly. Yeah.
No, I don't use scripts.
No, we don't believe in that.
No.
What's up, man? What you got going
I
on?
came out here to wish you a happy Father's Day.
Thank you. Happy Father's Day to you too.
Well, thank you.
Annabelle,
Thank you.
who sang a few weeks ago. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah,
It's great.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I was thinking today, you and I have something in common,
Mm-hmm.
since being dads, and that's we both appreciate a good dad joke.
A good dad. We
Or
do
maybe
appreciate.
we really appreciate the bad ones too, because
Yeah.
let's be real, they're all bad.
Is that what a dad? Is a dad joke just a bad?
Bad joke.
Dad,
That's why
bad
they rhyme.
joke.
Dad rhymes with bad.
That someone thought of that, and it was you.
So you and I was thinking,
Yeah.
what would really make my Father's Day today
Right.
is if we had a dad joke battle.
A dad joke
Today.
battle. Wow.
Like right now.
You guys up for that? You up for having a
guys?
little bit of fun?
So I think you've got some pretty good ones. You know who else I think has some really good ones? And that would be Nick Toomey.
Yeah, he does.
You want to bring him
Hey,
up
let's
here?
bring Nick up, ladies and gentlemen.
Let's
Come
bring
on up.
Nick up. All right, so this is how this is going to go.
Can we just? How did you work out a walk-up song? How did you feel that? Like,
I don't know. You pay guys off on donuts so you can get
Yeah.
anything.
I get Hillsong.
Hey, before
and
we
you
get into this too,
yeah.
I just want to. You mentioned cowbell. I can throw down on the cowbell. That might be the next battle.
That would be the best thing in the whole world. Just a couple of guys hitting
We
the
got a
cowbell.
song left. I mean, we can do
Yeah,
that.
let me see what happens.
So this is how this is
I
going to happen.
love how Lake Ann is like, what church did I just show up to?
up,
They're all
Lake
going,
Ann?
what just happened? Yeah, anyway, sorry. Yep.
All right, so bad dad joke battle. This is how this is going to go. Basically, you laugh, you lose. So you want to keep a stone face. We don't want any of this chuckle house.
Chuckle House.
Right?
Is that what this does?
Yeah. So you laugh, you lose. If you laugh, you get a point against you. And we're going to keep track of scores right up here.
Yeah.
So we're going like golf score. Lowest score wins. And I think we're just going to take turns giving your best dad joke,
Yeah.
trying to get the other to laugh. If you laugh, you get a point, all right?
Yeah.
And I think it's only fair since, Nick, you've been a father the longest. How about you give us your first dad joke? What you got for us?
Hold on, I feel like I should.
Yeah?
Like Celine Dion.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm the center.
You better get ready.
Here we go.
You buckled the last service, so you better
I
get
did
yours.
so bad.
Yeah.
I
okay.
lost by 8.
You ready?
Yep.
What did the excited gardener do when spring finally came?
I don't know.
He wet his plants.
Oh, yeah, that's a point. That's a point right there.
Dude.
My favorite part of that is how proud you are of the middle school part of it. All right, here we go.
Bathroom humor will always be funny.
Always
Just-
wins. Here we go. What happened to the frog's car? It got towed.
We got a tie game here.
Wait a second. That was like a chuckle. That wasn't a full laugh. That was like a half.
No chuckle house.
No chucker. You're not in this. Stop. Stop.
Man, my cheaters are all fogged up. It's like super humid in here. Okay.
All right. Round
Number
2. What
two.
you got, Nick?
A bear goes into a bar and says to the bartender, I want a Dr. Pepper.
What?
That's a point. Oh, yeah, you got it. Yeah.
I gotta finish it because it's a good
I
one.
thought you did.
No. A bear goes in the bar and says to the bartender, I want a Dr. Pepper. Bartender says, sure, buddy, but why the big pause? Because I'm a bear!
That's another one.
I got 2 points on that one?
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
You're just racking them up.
Gosh.
Okay. What you got, Patrick?
Ooh,
You're down 2 points, just so you know.
let's see here. What do you call a lazy doctor? Dr. Doolittle.
Because he does very little.
That's so bad. Oh, sorry. Oh, that's
My
bad.
favorite part is no one over here is laughing. That's my favorite. Like, no one under like 50 is. That's fair. All right, fair.
This is going to be our last round, so
Last round.
bring out the best.
All right, this
The
is
big
from
uns.
this is from my grandson. But actually, hold on a second. My phone's ringing. That could be the booth. No, it's my brother Kevin. Never mind. Because I did have an ace in the hole from.
Did you just check your
Anyway,
phone?
this is for.
It was his lifeline.
Well, Mark Bentley just showed me one that was awesome. But this is from my grandson Landon.
That's awesome.
He's just like. Okay, what did the hot dog say after winning a race?
I
I'm the wiener.
Yeah, I can do that. That's a point. That's a point.
That's it.
You can't say that in church.
All right.
That's awesome.
You got to bring out a really heavy hitter here.
Seriously,
You're down 2. So.
No one over here is coming back.
I have to
That's
fall
awesome.
off the stage now to lose.
No, that was good. You really do. Oh yeah. I'm trying to pick. All right, here we go. Okay. What? I want to pick the best one. What days are the strongest? Saturday and Sunday, because the rest are weekdays.
Oh, folks. Hey, I got to give you that one.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you, Google. That was great.
Yeah.
Well, looking at the score, Patrick has 5, Nick has 3. I think that means Nick's our winner.
Yeah,
for
get an
Nick
extra
Toomey.
donut.
Congratulations, Nick Toomey, winner of the Bad Dad Joke
Bad
Battle.
dad. Bad dad. Hey, thanks, band. That rocked it out for me. I don't know if you noticed that after the bad dad jokes was the bad dad dance. But happy Father's Day to all of you dads out there. We're so glad. I can't believe there's so many people here at the 11 o'clock service. I figured everybody would be out on the golf course. So way to go. Because you know how it is on Mother's Day. All the moms, they want all the kids and the dads and everybody to come. Father's Day, man, that's, you guys want to be out on the boats or out on the golf course. So maybe that's what you've got going on this afternoon. I don't know if you've gotten your Father's Day gifts yet, but I found like the craziest Father's Day gift. I didn't get it for a couple reasons. I didn't tell my family about it in time, but also it's a mere $810. You can think about this next year. You can go online and send a photo of your father or your grandfather and get in the mail that's a block of cheese. It's kind of creepy, right? And like if you get it and it's like you and your kids say Happy Father's Day and they slice your head off and eat it, it's just weird every way you look at it. Anyway, I hope that you get a great Father's Day gift. And thinking about Father's Day got us thinking about this whole idea. We're kind of talking about dads as everyday heroes, but we live in a world where people are obsessed with superheroes. Like all the Marvel comic movies that come out. I think Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson just came out with a new movie called Skyscraper. I haven't seen it. I just saw the trailer to it. And in these superhero movies, it's like insane. Like guys are running through a hail of bullets. There's like 15 bad guys, all with machine guns. They never get hit. And then they turn around, they fire one shot, and 5 guys die. It's like crazy. They get in head-on collisions. The car explodes, blows up. They walk away unscathed. They like in this trailer that I saw, The Rock jumps out of a skyscraper, like through the air, whoa, and he like crashes through another building and nails the landing. If I jumped off this stage, I'd blow out both knees. It's like, so in a world of superheroes that none of us mere mortals can actually live up to, is it possible for dads, stepdads, grandpas, even men who play a father role in somebody's life, is it possible for us to be normal, everyday, real-life heroes? And the answer is absolutely yes. In fact, I'm calling this message is a little different from what some of the other campuses. It's called Dads Who Make a Difference. And I want to talk about one dad. Some of you may not know this guy. His name is Abraham. I'll kind of bring him back in a moment. But this is kind of the central truth that I want us to wrap around. And it's this. It's not our ability that allows us to be a dad who makes a difference or to be an everyday hero. It's not our ability. Bring up this next slide. It's our availability. And one of the challenges I have this morning is to get all of you dads to believe that. That really isn't. I mean, our abilities, like my abilities are so bad in most things. I am like, if I screw a light bulb in and it works, I think I'm a man. It's just so, I'm so incompetent at so many things. And I know it's so easy to compare ourselves. But at the end of the day, the dads who make a difference, it really has not so much to do with your abilities. It has to do with your availabilities. And Abraham serves as a great example. So we're going to kind of take a look at his life. And if you wonder, who was Abraham? Abraham was one of the most influential people in the history of the world. Now, that's a big statement. Why would I say that? It's because, among other things, he was the father of the entire Jewish population through his son Isaac, and Isaac's son Jacob, who was then renamed as Israel. So he's the father of the Jewish nation. But not just the Jewish nation, all the Arab people groups on the earth today trace their lineage back to this guy named Abraham. And not only that, but 3 of the world religions trace their history back to Abraham. The oldest of the big 3 would be Judaism. The second one would be Christianity, because Jesus was a descendant of Abraham. And then even Islam would trace their lineage through Abraham's Arab ancestors. They would also trace their lineage back to Abraham. So he's kind of a big deal. Now, when it comes to dads that make a difference, it's not, when I talk about dads who make a difference, I'm talking about dads that have solid marriages, not perfect, but good marriages, and they raise little kids who become mature, loving, positive contributors to society, children. It's not just dumb luck. That happens through the lives of everyday heroes, the dads who make a difference. And Abraham is a great example. He's not a perfect human being. So we're going to take a look at some things from Abraham's life, because he serves as a good example of a dad who made a difference. There are a lot of character qualities you can focus on in Abraham's life. I'm going to really do a deeper dive into 3, but there's a couple other ones that I'm not going to spend a lot of time on. One is he was a hard worker. And when you talk about dads that make a difference, there's just something to be said for getting out of bed and going to jobs. Some of you dads, you've got jobs you love, it's your dream job. And some of you, you just do what you've got to do to put food on the table. Abraham was that kind of guy, hardworking and industrious. There's something else about Abraham. He was generous. There was a generosity in him. There's an interesting story involving his nephew Lot. And Lot and Abraham had both become very wealthy. They had all kinds of herds and flocks, and they were overgrazing the area. And Abraham says, look, there's plenty of territory. You take your pick. You go here, I'll go there. If you want that, I'll go there. So Lot looks out into the Jordan Valley. If you've ever been to Israel, this is very lush, fertile soil. It also happened to be right in the vicinity of Sodom and Gomorrah. But Lot says, I want this. So Abraham says, okay. and he lets them have it. There's a generosity in him, and I think that's one of the character qualities of dads that make a difference. They're generous with their time, their resources, and their energy. And another one is that dads that make a difference are warriors in the most redemptive sense of the word. Abraham, there was a time when his nephew Lot, basically there was an invading army. They took Lot and his family and his herds and cattle and all of it and basically imprisoned them. And this happened in the way south of Israel in the desert, and they were on their way up almost to Syria, way in the north. And Abraham gets 331 guys in his household and chase after them for miles, and they free Lot and his family and bring them all back. There is a warrior spirit in a dad that makes a difference. They fight for their families. And while I know I've got to move on, I just want to say, man, we got to fight for our families in this culture. We got to fight for our sons. We got to fight for our daughters in ways that previous generations maybe didn't have to, because they're exposed to so much more today. And I think about this silly, I don't know why I always default to this, but I think about this crazy, silly, and hysterical sketch from the Saturday Night Live days when Chris Farley was alive. And Chris Farley is the motivational speaker. And Chris Farley, or Matt Foley, who lived in a van down by the river eating a steady diet of government cheese, if you've ever seen that. But before that scene, you've got the late Phil Hartman, and I don't know who it was that played the mother, but on the couch were these two completely disrespectful and out of control teens played by David Spade and Christina Applegate, yeah. And they're like rolling their eyes because Dad, here's what Dad says. He's like, hey, kids, because he's trying to be so hip to his teenage kids, and they're like, what a loser. That's kind of what's going on. And then they're like, your mother and I, we've got a motivational speaker in the basement. He's been drinking 14 cups of coffee, and he's got a wire, but he's like, here's what he says. Your mother and I, we don't want to get down on you. And the kids, of course, are like, you got to be kidding me. I want to tell you, there's a role for dads who make a difference to get down on your kids. Like to get in their face, to get in their business. Because they're for one thing, they're kids and they're capable of making really dumb decisions. Have you noticed? No disrespect for any of the young people, but I mean, there are times when dads got to be warriors. They got to fight for their kids. I like to say, dads, sometimes you got to get down on your kids, and sometimes you got to get down with your kids. You know what I mean by that? We have dance parties in our house all the time. You can go to my wife, she's right there. There are so many videos of me dancing with my grandkids, and they're like the bad dad jokes. The dances are so bad, they're epic. Yeah. So I'm telling you, Abraham was a warrior, fought for his families. We have to do the same. But there are three key attributes in Abraham's life that I want to take a little deeper dive. Actually, the first one is the one where I want to spend the greatest amount of time. And in Abraham's life, he was a dad who made a difference because of his deep, and I want to emphasize, practical, in the trenches faith. Now, this is not this pie in the sky stuff that's divorced from everyday life. In Abraham's life, there was a deep, abiding, in the trenches faith that made an impact not only on his family, but on future generations, which is why we're still talking about him 4,000 years later, or thereabouts. So in Genesis chapter 12, and we're going to be looking at some excerpts that come out of Genesis chapter 12 through Genesis chapter 22, kind of the middle part of the book. It's the first book in the Bible if you've never read it. Fascinating. But here's the command part, where God enters into this relationship. We call it a covenant with Abraham. Here's what God says. Here's the command. He says, the Lord said to Abram, because his name was Abram, and then God later changed his name to Abraham. He said, go from your country, go from your people, and go from your father's household to the land I will show you. He doesn't even tell him where he's going. I mean, it's one thing to leave one job or one city and there's a new opportunity. But he doesn't even know where he's going. And the operative word here in the command is to go. This is not a suggestion. This is a command. But with it comes an amazing promise. Here's what God says. If you go, I will make you into a great nation. And I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. This is amazing. I will bless those who bless you, and anybody who curses you, I will curse. And all the peoples on the earth, think about that. All the people groups on the earth will be blessed through you. if you go. A huge command and promise. And what made Abraham, among other things, but I think maybe in a unique way, what made him a dad who made a difference was that he acted in faith. He didn't just intellectually contemplate the idea of God. He stepped out in faith. So a dad that makes a difference, here's what they do. They hear from God, they obey. That's the essence of being a disciple. We hear, we obey. And sometimes doing that requires real guts. I've heard a lot of stories about people who really heard from God and obeyed. One that I heard a while ago involves a young man. I don't know exactly how old he was, but I think he was probably in his 20s. And God spoke to him. He was in India, and he wanted, I think his ancestors were from the country of Bangladesh across the river. And it was a big river, like a half a mile wide with a big, strong current. And he felt like God said, take the gospel into these Muslim villages in Bangladesh. He's like, how am I going to do that? So he gets some Bibles together, and he underlines like John 3:16, Romans 5:8, a bunch of verses in the New Testament that kind of point to Jesus. He puts them in a backpack, and his plan was to sneak to the river because he was going to leave India and sneak into another country. But there was border patrol. So it's at midnight, and he's getting near the river, and all of a sudden the lights come on, and the Indian border patrol spots him. They pull out their guns and they tell him to halt. He goes running for the river. Bullets are flying. He gets to the river. He takes off the backpack. Now, I got to tell you, these Bibles were not packed in, waterproof Ziploc bags. He takes this backpack full of Bibles, chucks it into the river, so he's got nothing on him. And he's thinking, well, I'll come back later and get them and then swim across. And how's that going to work? You threw a burlap sack with Bibles that are going to get soaking wet. They're going to sink to the bottom or get washed into the Bay of Bengal. I don't know what he was thinking. But the police arrest him. They lock him up for 2 or 3 days, and they finally release him. He goes back to his home. He's like, man, I'm so bummed. I had such high, well, I'll try next month. So he's not giving up. So 8 or 9 days go by, and there's a knock on his door. And he opens the door, and these strangers say to them, are you so-and-so? He goes, yeah. He goes, why didn't you write your name and your contact information in the book? It took us 9 days to find you. He's like, what are you talking about? These books. They pull out the Bibles that he threw into the river that were completely dry, that somehow floated across the river, and these people found them. And they started reading them, and they started handing them out. They found out that there were 4 groups meeting in homes to talk about Jesus as a result of that one guy's attempt to be obedient. I actually think God intervened and saved his life, because had he tried to swim across the river, he'd have been gone. So I would say it this way. Dads, let faith form you like it formed Abraham, like it formed that young man in India. Let faith form you in a way that your words and your actions forms faith in others. Right? Let your family see you read God's word and lead out of God speaking to you through his word. Think about the 10 Commandments. The moral decisions that we make. We make them all the time. Do I lie about this, or do I tell the truth? Do I steal, or do I pay for it? Do I stay faithful to my wife, or do I commit adultery? It's all right there. So let the moral decisions that you make be formed by God's word in a way that others see it. Same thing with your financial world. How you handle money, how you deal with issues of relational conflict and forgiveness. Talk with your children not only about what you believe, but why you believe what you do. I remember my daughter Chrissy sitting down here some years ago. Before Kensington, this church was called Bay Point. And before Bay Point existed, I was at another church. And my wife and I were feeling God calling us to launch what would become Bay Point. And so we were trying to hear from God and then obey, but we had to explain it to our children, at least try. And I remember our daughter Chrissy laying in bed, and we're telling her what's going on. She wanted no part of it. And because she was going to be forced to leave a church that she didn't want to leave, as where all her friends were. And I'd like to tell you that conversation went really well. I did the best I could talking to an 11-year-old. But I believe, and you could talk to her after the service, I think that's a memory where she would say, well, whether I liked it or not at the time, at least I knew that my dad's faith was forming the decisions that he and my mom were making. So I would put it this way. Abraham's willingness to trust God and to follow him no matter what may be the greatest legacy that he left his children. And here's why I would say that, because the New Testament confirms it. Abraham is memorialized in one of the chapters in the New Testament from the book of Hebrews. And chapter 11, they talk about this sort of hall of fame of faithful people, and Abraham is in there. And here's what the text says. It was by faith that Abraham obeyed when God called him to leave home and go to another land that God would give him as his inheritance. He went without knowing where he was going. And then it goes on to say, and even when he reached the land God promised him, he lived there by faith, for he was like a foreigner living in a tent. So Abraham, he went in faith, and he continued to live in faith, and everybody saw it. Everybody saw it, including his wife, his family, his extended family. They saw a man whose life was marked by a deep, abiding, practical, in the trenches faith. So how do you leave a legacy of faith? Well, you do it one faith-informed decision at a time. Dads, if you want your children to have a servant's heart, if you would love for your children to grow up and live an other-centered life, in a me-centered world, if you long to see your children become kind and compassionate in a world that can be cold and cruel, then I would encourage you in a very practical way to think about the words of Jesus and how they apply to our lives as dads. Because here's what Jesus said. He said, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds. So the light that's within, Jesus, who's the light of the world, he said the world will see it through your good deeds. They may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. So it makes me, on this Father's Day, I can't help but think of my own dad. My dad would have been 95 years old on June the 6th. He passed away in 1999, so he's been gone for a long time. My dad was such a cool dude. He had some of those attributes of Abraham. He was hardworking. He was loyal. He stayed faithful to my mom for 50 years. But one thing that was absent in my relationship with my father, which I so wish was different, is we never talked about God. I was raised in a different church background, and I went to a parochial school for a while. So it's not that we were a faithless family. We never talked about God. We never talked about Jesus in a personal way. And I share that not in all to disrespect my dad, because I think it was just his background. He wasn't raised that way. I share it with you because maybe you come out of that background, and maybe you can say, you know what, I'm going to step up my game. Even you younger men who aren't even married yet. Oh, you and young dudes. Like, I don't know, maybe you had, faithful dads that read you the Bible or whatever, but if you didn't, you can still, whoever, we are and whatever age we're at, we can step into that role. You can be the Abraham to your family. So if you want to live a life with no regrets, follow God with what we call IRCO, immediate, radical, costly obedience. Just hear the voice of the Father. Sometimes God tells us to do things, we're like, what? Just walk into it, and your children will be blessed. They'll thank you for it, and the world will be a better place. So I think that's the first thing that we see about Father Abraham, is his deep and abiding faith. The second thing I want to touch on, these last two won't take as long, but is that Abraham understood the value of a human soul. And there's a fascinating passage in that window from Genesis 12 through Genesis 22. Genesis chapter 18 is where this is found, where the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, where Abraham's nephew Lot settled, those two towns had become so wicked, so perverse, so violent, so ugly, that God made the decision to basically rain down fire and brimstone and wipe out the cities. I don't know what that does in terms of your theology of God. Is he just like a meanie? Was he having a bad day? Or is it possible that God, who is loving and merciful and compassionate, sees things differently than we do, and that it's possible that entire people groups can become so utterly corrupted and their hearts so unredeemably hard that that's the only recourse God has? Because it's certainly not the modus operandi that you see God. It's not the normal way that God operates. But he tells Abraham, grab Lot and your family and get out of town because I'm going to end this thing. And Abraham begins a debate with God. It's a fascinating story. If you haven't read it, read it in Genesis 18 because Abraham had walked long enough with God to know that he was a good God. And yet there's this severe judgment coming. And Abraham's like, I know this is outrageous, God, but I just got to ask it. If you find 50 people, just 50 in those two cities, would you spare the city? God says, I'll spare the town if you can find 50 people. He goes, I know I'm like getting close to the edge, but 45? God says, I'll spare it for 45. And it goes 40, 30, 20, this conversation between God and Abraham. It's amazing. And then it comes down to this. Finally, Abraham said, Lord, please don't be angry with me if I speak one more time. Suppose only 10 are found there, just 10. And the Lord replied, then I will not destroy it for the sake of the 10. But judgment did come. How messed up must have those cities been for that kind of judgment to come? And I think it speaks to the corrosive nature of sin. If I don't deal with the sin in my life, if I try to like sugarcoat it and bury it, it's gonna corrupt me. And then if it ends up corroding other people, apparently it can get to the point where entire people groups are just messed up. But what I love about the story is that in it, Abraham recognizes the value of a human life. And dads who make a difference do the same. They look out into this broken, messed up world, and they see the value in all human beings, from the oldest, frailest person to the unborn child in its mother's womb. They see value in everybody from the Rhodes Scholar to the person who is severely developmentally challenged. And they see value even in those who are shaking their fist at God and living vile, evil lives. This is the value that's important in the Kensington culture. It's the value of evangelism. It's the value of recognizing that while there are people who are in open rebellion against God, you will never lay eyes on a person for whom Jesus did not gladly shed his blood. And so, dads that make a difference, if your children see you engaging with people who are far from God, if they see you serving the least, the last, and the lost, if they see you inviting your friends to a weekend service or to a men's small group or the Field and Stream team, the FAST team here at Kensington, where guys can connect doing guy stuff. I mean, when they see you doing that, they will likely follow your cue in terms of seeing the value of a human soul. And then there's one other thing that we see in Abraham's. I wanted to mention this because of the value of evangelism. This is an interesting title for the series starting next Sunday, Learning to Fly, and this whole idea of getting rid of baggage. It's really about forgiveness and kind of moving through life and packing light. And this is one of the hallmarks of our Christian faith. It's this idea of forgiveness, which, by the way, is utterly unfair. Forgiveness is, it's utterly unnatural. Forgiveness is not a natural human response. Vengeance is a natural human response. You mess with me, I will mess you up. That's how we respond. Forgiveness is anchored in the goodness and the mercy of God. But I'm telling you, there are a ton of people that orb in your sphere of influence who don't know this. And so they're carrying around unforgiveness towards others, and they're carrying around a huge amount of unforgiveness because of decisions they've made. And so I just really hope that you'll take some relational risk this week and invite people that you know that really need to wrestle with this matter of forgiveness, because we're going to go after it in the next couple weeks. So here's a third one. Abraham, deep practical in the trenches of faith. He understood the value of a human soul. The last one that made Abraham a dad that made a difference is it had to do with his own self-awareness of personal brokenness. Because this is amazing. Soon after Abraham has this conversation with God, God gives him the command, and Abraham receives the promise, and he starts out. He hardly gets out of town. And what does he do? He betrays his wife. He basically sells her out. Check this out. Genesis 12, verse 10. At that time, a severe famine struck the land of Canaan, forcing Abram to go down to Egypt, where he lived as a foreigner. As he was approaching the border of Egypt, Abram said to his wife Sarai, "Look, you are a very beautiful woman." Now I'm imagining she interrupts him mid-sentence and goes, "Aw, that's so sweet. Well, thank you. I don't even have my makeup on. You're not so bad looking yourself." He's like, "Oh, hey, there's more here. When the Egyptians see you, they will say, 'This is his wife. Let's kill him. Then we can have her.'" She's like, "Oh, I hadn't thought about that. That's not so good." And he's like, "That's all right. I got a solution." Here's what he says. "So please tell them you are my sister. Then they will spare my life and treat me well because of their interest in you." Ladies, you think your guy's blown it? And you know what? Abraham didn't do that once to Sarah. He did it twice. And we can look at it like, what a coward. And it was. Let's just call it what it was. It was disobedience and cowardice. But if you understand the culture at that time, Abraham didn't have, at least on the human level, we sometimes will talk about the upper story, where God is working out his plan in history, and the lower story is what we see. In the lower story, where Abraham lived, he didn't have a lot of great choices. It seemed to make sense at the time. And yet, it was an incredible act of betrayal and cowardice. So Abraham is a model of a dad who makes a difference because he owned his brokenness, not because he was a perfect guy. He knew his relationship with God had nothing to do. God didn't say, "Hey, Abraham, I'm going to select you, and all the nations of the world will be blessed through you because you're the man. You are a moral, spiritual giant, unequaled on earth." No, it wasn't that. Abraham's faith, I'll put it this way, Abraham's failure, or lack of faith in this case, cowardice, did not disqualify him. Rather, his humility uniquely qualified him. And for all of us dads who have blown it, for all of us who have said dumb things to our wives, weren't there when we should have been, failed our kids, Abraham's failure, in this particular case, cowardice, it didn't ultimately disqualify him from being a dad, person who changed history. Rather, his humility uniquely qualified him. Dads who make a difference live their lives with what I would call a level of appropriate transparency, because you can't divulge all your stuff to just anybody, or you're guilty of TMI, like way too much information to people who don't need to know. But they know how to say, in appropriate ways, appropriate times, especially to their children, "I'm sorry, I was wrong, I wasn't there for you, I made a promise, I didn't live up to it." Some of our children are dying on the inside to hear that. "I'm sorry I hurt you. Sorry I disappointed you. Forgive me. I love you." Some of you have never heard those words from your father. In fact, I know men who are my age, and their fathers are in their 80s and 90s, and they still wish one time that their father would just say, "I want to apologize for whatever it is." And you can't even believe the healing that happens when that happens. And if you're a younger dad and your children, they see you on a fairly consistent basis, they don't always have to be gigantic cathartic moments, but just to say, "Man, that was not my finest moment. I should have done this. I should have zigged and I zagged and I blew it." And man, you will build, that's a character issue. Your integrity doesn't take a hit when you sin, or it certainly doesn't help it. But what really breaks your integrity is when you don't own what you did, right? So, and if you were raised, what do you do if you were raised in a situation where your dad was not an honorable man, when he was not faithful, or he wasn't even there? Maybe you didn't even know your dad. What do you do? I thought about that. The only thing I could come up with is you do the best you can. You do the best you can. Sometimes there's nothing you can do. Sometimes there is, though. Sometimes you've got a relationship with your dad. It's broken. It's distant. I would just challenge you to do this. If you've got a dad and you're estranged, if there's some small thing that you can do that's authentic, that blesses you and honors your father. I can't guarantee how it'll turn out. You might get rebuffed one more time. But I've seen it where sometimes when we're kind and gracious and we take a step, sometimes it breaks down a wall, but sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes what does happen is it begins to heal our own hearts. So I want to kind of move towards the finish line here. We've just barely scratched the surface of the life of Abraham. We haven't even talked about maybe the most epic story in Abraham's life, which is when God called him to sacrifice his own son. You're like, what? If you never read the story, and this was his son Isaac. That was this miraculous birth because he didn't come around until his mother was 99 years old. And so he's now like 13 years old, and God says, I want you to take your son and place him on an altar, and I want you to sacrifice him to me. We look at that and go, that's the most bizarre. That's good. This guy, God must be a monster. Well, we don't understand that in that culture, child sacrifice was common among the pagan religions. That story of the sacrifice of Isaac was never about the death of Isaac. You know what it was about? It was about the death of Abraham. How so? Most of us don't even realize this, but we have a certain script in our head of how we think our lives are supposed to go. And sometimes we have to die to that because God's got another plan. He's got a better plan. It might not be an easy plan, but in that act when he says, are you willing to trust me with the life of your son? There is a death that happens not to Isaac, but in the heart of Abraham. So Abraham's an amazing man. And as you think about his life and some of the character qualities of him, a man of deep and abiding in the trenches faith, a man who saw the value of other human lives, a man who was generous, a man who fought for his family, all of these kinds of things. What would our lives look like as dads? What would our communities and our families look like if we chose to live fully surrendered lives to God? If we lived and acted on the fact that every human life has meaning and value? If we took more risks to invite people into God's kingdoms? If we were warriors who fought for our families? Who lived with a kind of open-handed generosity? Where we owned our brokenness, and when necessary, we humbly made amends for those we hurt? I think our families would be stronger. Our churches would be stronger. And the world would be a better place. And the good news is we all have the capacity to kind of make those sort of decisions, like Abraham did, to say, there's a bazillion ways I can live my life, but God, I'm going to follow you. And I want to say publicly thank you to every dad, imperfectly as we've done it, who has tried to live their life in a way that honors God and honors your marriage and honors your children and your grandchildren. And just in case you wonder whether or not those little sacrifices that you make a difference, there's a video I want you to watch, and this one's for you dads.
Growing up, I never really knew my dad, my biological father. And so that was something that was really tough growing up because everybody that I knew in my neighborhood, they had a mom and a dad. And it was kind of awkward because it's like, well, I just have my mom. That really established a great bond between me and my mom because it was just us. Like, it was me and her against the world, and that was just like what we were doing. And then when I was 5, she met a guy. He had an opportunity to literally just focus on my mom and concentrate on my mom and making her happy, but he saw me there and he intentionally took the time out to make sure that I was cared for and making sure that I was okay. And he made it known from the beginning that that was something that he wanted to do and that he wanted to participate in just being in my life. And he never really wanted to exclude me. And I hear a lot of people give me stories about how they really felt excluded by, like, their new dad coming in, and he always sacrificed comfort and finances and everything just to make sure that I felt included. And so I think that was probably the biggest thing throughout my life. Him making sure that I was included and making sure that I was valued and that I was respected as like an active participant in the family, that's how he earned the title of dad. I would say that I've seen my dad fight for me and my family just by consistently encouraging me and always making sure that he knew that I knew that I was great and that I was eligible for greatness. He would always tell me, you can do anything, and don't allow anyone to tell you that you can't. And that's something that really shaped me, because confidence is something that is a struggle for all of us, myself included, but whenever I can get a hold of my dad, he's just like, listen, don't let anyone tell you that you can't do this. You know who you are. This is like, you're my kid. Like, this is who you are. You're going to be great because I said you're going to be great. That's who God made you to be, and that's who you are. He always told me to make sure that I always treat people not just the way that I wanted to be treated, but to treat people the way that God treats me. He modeled Christ in the way that he treated others. It really has shown me what a real man is and what a real man does when the chips are down. And not even just a real man or a real father, but just a real leader. Being a leader is really a response. And being a leader is all about how you respond. And so that's allowed me to pretty much be there for any and everyone that I can be there for, whether that's as a ministry leader or as just a friend to someone. I always think to myself, this is something that my dad would fight for. This is something that my dad would want to help someone with. And so because of that, I always want to make sure that I'm always there for someone, especially when they need it.
Will you all stand with me as we sing this last song together? We're going to sing Great Are You, Lord. You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. Sing this with me. You give life. You give life. You are love. You bring light to the darkness. You give hope. You restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. We pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. Let's hear every voice sing that. And all the earth will shout your praise.
Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing.
Great are you, Lord. All right, come on. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath, it's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise, we pour out our praise. Your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise to you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs. So we pour out our praise, we pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs. We pour out our praise to you,
Man, what just happened? Did you feel that? I don't know who these two gals are in the front row, but I was just watching you two worship. Man, way to bring it. Thank you to all of our guests. And by the way, this is our deaf community in the front row, and to watch you guys worship was so inspiring. Yeah, love you guys. Yeah. And to our Lake Ann guests, thank you guys for coming. Thank you for serving students from all over the area this summer. And I just want to say this before I pray a blessing on the dads. I was thinking at the first service, Steve Andrews, who's the founding pastor of Kensington, Steve and I have known each other for years, and we spent some time talking about our journey spiritually, but also our families. We come out of very different families. Like my mom and dad were awesome in their own right, but Steve's, talk about godly people. And, but I think if Steve was here, he'd tell you what I'm going to tell you. It doesn't matter if you've had the greatest mom and dad in the whole world, or if you had parents that maybe, weren't the best. In some ways, it doesn't matter, but there's going to be a hole in your soul that no earthly father can fill, or earthly mother, or wife, or if you're looking for another person to fill it, they won't, because there's a God-shaped hole in every human being that only God can fill. And one of the most powerful ways in which the Bible refers to our God is Father. And I know that's a term that's hard for some of you, whether you're in the room or you're watching online. It's like, I don't even talk to me about that, because my father was I think rather than dismissing God as Father, we need to redeem what that really means. Because your Father in heaven loves you. He knows the joys and the sorrows of your heart. He knows and sees the hidden pain that you try very hard to conceal from others. And He's the God who made you. He loves you. He is for you. That's why I love the song that we just sang. It's not, I don't even know if there is a Father's Day anthem, but it reminds us that there's a God who's worthy of pouring out our praise, because He's the one who made us. He's proud of us. He loves us. He forgives us. And all He really wants is the relationship that we all so deeply need. Some of you know that. Some of you are walking that out in a relationship with His Son, Jesus, who came into the world to redeem us. Some of you may not. So on this Father's Day, as we honor our dads, as we should, I hope that you'll also particularly those of you who wonder, is this real? Is there a God in heaven who can fill that hole in my soul? Just as I prayed, maybe you can just say, if this is real, bring it on. So here's what I'd like to do as I kind of think about that. I'd like you, I don't know how to do this in a way that isn't just a tad bit awkward. You guys ready for just a little awkwardness? Not like crazy awkward. But I want to just pray, because the idea of a blessing comes through the words that we speak and through the laying out of hands. It's why Jesus took children into his arms and he blessed them. So I'd like us to just lay a hand on the men in the room. I don't care if you're a dad, a grandpa, or whatever. And you might be near somebody that you don't know and they're a stranger. It's okay. I want to make sure that there's no men in the room that don't have a hand on their shoulder to just reach out and bless them. So we can do that in a way that's not creepy, right? Just like, if you have to move, now is the time. And so just do that. In a world where there's so much inappropriate touch, there's redemptive touch. There's a touch that blesses us. So let me just, okay. This is my daughter. Yeah. So, God, we thank you that you are our Father in heaven. Hallowed be your name. We pray in this moment as we lay hands on dads and grandpas and young men who one day will be fathers. We pray that your kingdom would come and that your will would be done on earth in the lives of these men. Just regular, ordinary men who, as we endeavor to walk with you, we can live heroically. I just pray, God, that every man would know that they're loved, they're valued, that they're appreciated. And I pray that we would figure out ways that are real, not fake, but real, to celebrate our dads. And Lord, if the wounds are too deep, if there's people who just didn't even know their dad, I pray that you would be their father. So thank you for this gathering. Help us to celebrate the life that you've given us with our fathers in a way that would honor you, our Heavenly Father. We pray this in Jesus' name. And everybody who agreed said, amen. All right, I was told to let you know before you go, there's still donuts out there and Arnie Palmer's for all the dads. The Lake Ann, I saw the Lake Ann crew coming in. I don't know if any of you guys are fathers, but man, you were crushing the donuts. So good for you. And then come back next week, bring your friends, and there's a photo booth out there, so get your photo taken. Thanks, everybody.
Hey, thank you so much for watching online. We're so glad that you decided to join us today. We hope you enjoyed your experience. I want to give you just a couple things before you leave. Next week, again, we're beginning a brand new series called Learning to Fly. And if you're around here in Northern Michigan, we would love to invite you to join us here at our Traverse City campus. Or if you're in Metro Detroit, we have several campuses in that area as well. But we'd love to connect with you live. If not, we're going to be here 9 and 11 next week, kicking off that series. I promise you, you're not going to want to miss that. And again, we're on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. It's really one of the best places that you can find out all the information about us and who we are and all that's going on at our campuses. Again, thanks so much for watching. We'll see you right back here next week.